Rick Klein, political director for ABC News, thanks for joining us today. Let's talk about last week's vote by the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee to strip New Hampshire of its first in the nation presidential primary spot. Your thoughts on the decision?
This was a major and aggressive move by President Biden to reshape the nominating calendar in a way that is not good for the state of New Hampshire. Even though New Hampshire didn't get the Iowa treatment of being kicked out altogether, the White House, the president, very aware of New Hampshire's unique status, including the state law that requires the primary to happen a week before any other state, and still went ahead with this, sidelining New Hampshire, jumbling it together with other states, taking away what has been a unique tradition for a long time in American politics. And I think the DNC is now giving Democrats in New Hampshire a chance to show that they can make progress, but it is going to be tough, in part because they don't want to do it, and in part because they may not be able to do it, given the fact you've got a Republican governor and a long tradition that even many Democrats want to maintain in the state, despite what the president's saying.
So for future candidates, what are the pros and cons of obeying the DNC's rules that will require them to stay away from New Hampshire or face some sort of punishment?
Yeah, it's really TBD. I think part of it is going to be a game of chicken with the candidates. If there's a primary field in a future election cycle that's relatively crowded, are some of them going to say, look, maybe it's worth taking the hit in terms of delegates I might lose if it means I can get the bounce that New Hampshire has traditionally gotten me. You know that the delegates have almost been secondary in previous cycles. New Hampshire isn't that large a state. It's about the momentum you get out of it, about the message it sends in the national media. So I fully expect that even if New Hampshire doesn't have the full sanctions of the DNC, there will be candidates that will want to play in a New Hampshire primary, even if it doesn't mean you get delegates. This is a dance we've seen in the past. There was a couple cycles ago where Florida and Michigan defied the DNC, and we saw people like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama try to dance around the rules that the DNC had put in. There's only so much power you have. Also, President Biden, even if he were to run again, he doesn't have any control over what the 2028 schedule looks like. So you could see something of a return. So there's a lot of variables, starting with whether the law is going to be changed in a way that it will allow the DNC calendar to even take hold.
Do you think it's good politics for the DNC to try to destroy the New Hampshire primary?
Look, I think it depends on your perceptions around this. One of the pressures that President Biden was responding to was the fact that the early states have not been representative of the demographics of the whole country. So adding into South Carolina, adding into Georgia, adding into Michigan gives you a much broader swath. On the flip side, those are very expensive states, even by comparison to a New Hampshire or an Iowa, to play in. So you're going to have candidates potentially draining their resources. And we remember the way that New Hampshire has sort of clarified races in the past. It's made winners and made losers, not just who wins, but who gets the perception of momentum out of it. Some of those Cinderella stories might be limited if only well-funded, huge, nationally organized campaigns are able to play the game.
How do you see it actually looking? Like Republicans showing up, Democrats showing up fully the week before, the night before the primary? What do you anticipate New Hampshire's actually going to look like?
I think some of the movements in the other states matter as well. It's not an easy path for Georgia to change its laws to allow this to happen for themselves either. So there's going to be a lot of resources there. The Iowa caucuses are going to happen on the Republican side, even if they don't on the Democratic side. I think each candidate's going to do what's best for him or herself along the way. I don't think it's the end of the New Hampshire primary, up to and including the first in the nation aspect of it. The Republicans, I think, will do what they can to preserve it. And I fully expect that even if the state law doesn't change, there'll be something resembling what we've had in the past, even if it doesn't have the same kind of special and exalted and standing alone status that New Hampshire has had in previous cycles.
Rick Klein, thanks for your insight from New Hampshire.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.